One of the biggest flaws that I see with organic content strategies is thinking that it starts with keyword research rather than customer research. Whenever I'm working with a real client, a B2B SaaS company, there's an entire layer of customer research that I'm conducting before I even enter within a keyword research tool. Within this video, I'm going to walk you through the 4 main components of customer research that I look for whenever working with a real company. Number 1 is the customer persona. Number 2 is going to be the customer journey. Number 3, the terminology that they use. And then number 4 is going to be the customer pain points. So let's dive in. So I talked about 4 components. Of customer research. So the first one is the customer persona. Who exactly are you trying to target? Who is that person? What do they do? What is their job role? What are their responsibilities? What kind of work they do? What kind of things they think about, etc. And this is the fundamental aspect that I feel like most of the strategists miss. Because they're inside keyword research tools, they're just thinking in terms of terms rather than knowing, is this the right person that I'm trying to reach? So we have persona. The idea mainly is to understand, is my audience going to be junior folks, senior folks? Is my understanding of who that person is correct or not? So for example, one thought exercise that I always think about is asking people, let's say if they have an email marketing software, and asking them, hey, if you were to devise a content strategy which is SEO focused for, let's say, 2 different types of personas, one are juniors, whatever the spellings are, juniors and directors. So these are 2 very different personas. One is just starting their career, the other one has been in the industry for decades. So their pain points, their challenges, the kind of things that they care about is going to be significantly different. Now the problem is, whenever I see people conducting keyword research without thinking of the persona first, is that they just jump into keywords without understanding that someone searching for an email marketing software as a term, as a keyword, tells them nothing about who that person is. Now, try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who actually owns or is responsible for the marketing of an email marketing software. If looking at their content calendar, if looking at their actual strategy, you're not able to tell whether it's directed towards juniors or directors, then it's flawed. For example, I want you to think about a term like email marketing best practices. I'm pretty sure that anyone building an SEO roadmap, creating a content calendar in the traditional sense, just jumping straight into a keyword tool will definitely think about that as a good middle of the funnel content opportunity. The problem is, a director will never search for something like that, right? And that is something that folks will totally miss, simply because when they're starting out, they're not focused on the persona. They're not trying to match everything, tally everything back to who exactly am I trying to target, and whether any of the opportunities that I'm looking at actually qualify to be relevant. So whenever you're building a content strategy, starting with the persona and the basic understanding of their roles and responsibilities, what kind of work they do, what kind of challenges they face, is going to be extremely crucial. The second one is going to be customer pain points. Now, when it comes to pain points, it's pretty simple. All you have to think about is what kind of challenges my targeted persona would face on a daily basis. What kind of things would they search for as a way to try to find their solutions. The good thing about this entire framework is that everything is connected. So if you have an understanding of the persona, you can think about the pain points. So again, if we were to think about a sales team, right? If that is the kind of persona that you're trying to attract, just knowing whether it's a junior person or a director or a manager, you would be able to understand whether their frustration is going to be about, let's say, automating something sales related, or maybe if it's a persona that is more on the managerial side, the struggle is going to be hiring a team of SDRs or something like that, right? So it could be hiring, it could be automation, or it could be millions of other things. Now, the reason why this point is important is because the person that you're trying to reach, their pain points will directly translate into keyword opportunities, literally. And this is the direct kind of a connection that you can make with a content strategy. Simply because when someone faces a problem, their first solution is going to be searching on Google, searching on ChatGPT, wherever, with a how to sort of a query, right? So that just becomes a direct sort of a content opportunity for you. And of course, in a series, it's going to be a content strategy direction. So essentially, if I were to wrap up the pain points one, it's mainly just about the struggles, the things that keep your persona up at night, the kind of things that they simply cannot figure out and they're forced to search about it. Now, the third one is going to be the customer journey. So we're going to write journey here. The idea is pretty simple again. When not so simple when it comes to B2B setting. When it comes to a B2B buyer, there have been a series of triggers that made them think of a solution like yours, and just dissecting that entire journey is your role. It will bring so much clarity to your keyword research ultimately in the later stages that you will thank yourself that you conducted this research. So essentially the idea is that in a B2B setting especially, there were a series of different touch points that led them to think about a solution like yours. There was a particular problem that they were trying to solve. There were a variety of different solutions that they were trying to evaluate on the basis of particular factors. So understanding that entire journey and how exactly they made certain decisions is going to be extremely crucial, not just in finding the keyword opportunities or building your content strategy holistically, but also when, for example, you work with the editorial team, giving them a direction of what kind of things they should be highlighting at the most critical stages. For example, in a more tactical, zoomed in sort of a scenario, what sort of things they should be highlighting in the introduction of an article, right? All of this information will directly contribute to that. So essentially what we're trying to figure out here is what led them to buy from us. So I would try to break this down into two main things. One would be triggers. In a B2B setting, again, as I mentioned, there are going to be specific events, reasons, factors that led them to think about a solution and then finally pick your brand. So understanding that entire procedure is going to be extremely critical. The second one is going to be their sources of information. Now, of course, we know that there are going to be certain triggers that led them to a decision like this, but what were the sources where they gathered the information? Or maybe we can say sources slash factors, right? As in, are they trying to find a particular budget bracket? Are they looking for a certain type of features? Are they trying to solve a particular problem which, let's say, only your solution highlights? Or many other things, right? So essentially it's understanding what kind of things my customer values and how exactly it fits into their overall customer buying journey. Now, the last one is going to be customer terminology. And I think this is the most underrated one. I haven't seen many folks pay attention to this, and this is really, really important in my opinion. So we'll say terminology. Essentially, the idea is to understand what sort of a language your customers use specifically around the problem that they're trying to solve, around a solution like yours. And I want to give you an example here. So have you ever noticed how doctors and patients describe the same thing in two very different ways? Doctors are usually using an academic language, right? And you can see this when you're trying to hear about a particular problem that you're facing health-wise, right? Maybe you're feeling a migraine, etc., right? And they would have a particular name for it, while you're just saying, hey, I have a headache. That gap exists based on the exposure that someone has to a particular problem, to a particular subject, and the number of years, the opinions that they have about it, etc. As in, a doctor has studied a headache for so long that they now have it, of course, they have a medical and academic terminology for it. But even apart from it, you will just call it a headache because the rest of the academic stuff, the literature stuff, that doesn't matter to you, right? It's just a headache to you. In the same way, I think about B2B buying journeys and the terminology that they used when they're trying to search for a solution, or they're trying to gather information about a particular problem, where there would be a disparity in the language that you use for your brand as the owner of a particular product, as the head of marketing who understands a particular industry really, really well, versus a customer. So, for example, maybe you have, a product like data box, whatever, right? You provide storage. Let's say you're the head of marketing at that particular company. You'd be like, hey, we have a pretty cool, cloud infrastructure slash cloud management software, right? So you're calling this like cloud management, a pretty hefty and big word, right? At the same time, maybe your customers are not that sophisticated when it comes to this particular problem, when it comes to this particular industry. And they're like, hey, you have a data storage product. So essentially, it's the same exact product that you have. They know what they're trying to look for as a solution, which is, hey, we want to upload some photos, we want to upload, and secure these particular files. Someone like you would call it a cloud management software simply because you've been in the industry for so long. You have an attachment with the product, with the problem. You have a different set of terminologies that you use, while your customers would be like, yeah, you have a data storage product. The disparity here will cause confusions in the keywords that you research ultimately. As in, if this is the language that you are supplying to your strategists, while your customers are actually using much simpler or a different language, it will cause confusion, which will lead to maybe driving traffic, which ultimately does not convert. You can think of many other examples, right? Just find someone from a company like Miro, right? Their chief product officer might be a sort of a persona who is really, really excited about their product, right? Simply because they've put so much effort, blood and sweat building that particular asset. And now they see Miro as a company that solves so many different problems. And they're like, hey, we would describe it as, let's say, maybe something like a project orientation software. Now, Miro could be a product like that, right? I'm not saying it's not solving a problem where we can use that sort of a terminology. It's simply that your customer will not use such language. They will just say, can you guess? It is a whiteboard software. You're getting my point essentially, which is having this disparity and distance between the language that you use versus your customers use will cause a pretty big confusion and distance in the effectiveness of your content strategy ultimately. Now, we've looked at the framework and we've tried to understand what are the different components that you need to pay attention to when you're conducting customer research. And your ultimate objective is to finally get into keyword research and get those terms which you can target in a content strategy. So we've looked at the actual framework, the theory. Now I want to paint a picture with a practical example. So let's look at a company like Loom, let's say, right? And apply this exact framework to see how customer research can translate into actual content opportunities from an SEO standpoint. So we're trying to do this for Loom, which is this screen recording software. So let's just use the same exact 4 components again. Number 1 is going to be the persona. So in this case, let's imagine it is sales teams. Now, just calling it sales teams is not going to be enough. So we have to get into a deeper layer and say, hey, maybe we're trying to reach SDRs, right? Now again, it will add a level of clarity which will finally translate into actual keyword opportunities, where you can very confidently say that, hey, we have this content roadmap simply because we're trying to target sales teams and specifically SDRs, not AEs, not head of sales, not head of revenue, SDRs specifically, who have a particular function to play. So it adds a lot of coherence. So let's keep going. Now the second one is, of course, the pain points. Now, let's say if we're focused on SDRs for the time being as a persona, then the pain point could be something like low cold email response rate. And of course, there would be a variety of different pain points and struggles, but let's just run with it as an example. I want to exactly show how this will turn into a keyword opportunity, and then you can use the same exact framing, the same exact flow to create your broader content strategy and a list of different content roadmap opportunities. Now, the next one is the customer journey. Now, essentially what you're trying to understand is what is the sequence of events that finally leads into researching a product like Loom by an SDR. So let's say within your investigation, however you're doing the research, maybe you're talking to sales teams who talk to these customers on a regular basis, or maybe even if you get the chance to directly interview a couple of customers for the product, for Loom, you can gather this information, which I'm about to show. Maybe you understand that the trigger in this case is, of course, low reply rates. And of course, when someone like an SDR is faced with a problem like this, they're trying to understand how to improve their cold outreach, right? So that becomes the next event, let's say, a meta event. So let's call it number one. Maybe this is number two. And of course, I'm super simplifying. This is not how customer journeys would actually practically work. There would be tons of other things that, of course, leads from one stage to another stage. But for the sake of example, we're looking at broader picture. Let's say in the next stage, they're like, hey, we have just found that video works really well when it comes to the overall effectiveness of your cold emails. Let's say that is one particular component, one particular facet that can really improve your cold outreach. And then finally, they're like, hey, when we understand that we need a video product to use in our cold outreach, we're now comparing multiple products, and they tell you one of the comparisons that we make is Loom versus Vidyard. Right? So now you can see that you've uncovered a ton of information which you can directly use in the content strategy, and it will also flow into the next particular stage. So let's keep going. So the last one is, of course, terminology. And again, based on everything that you've gathered so far, and of course, with the interactions that you've either had directly with the customers, or maybe the sales teams or the customer success teams, or any sort of teams who directly have a touch with the customer, you've understood particular things about the terminology and the language that your buyer use. Maybe to keep it very simple, there's a use language like video prospecting. So we have video prospecting. Maybe that's a keyword that they use, right? When I say keyword, I mean just a term that they use within the language that they typically are utilizing. Perhaps then they also use async demos, right? Again, a part of the SDR function. Another one could be personalized outreach, right? Now we have a ton of data. We now exactly understand who we're trying to reach, which is an SDR who operates in a sales team. We know exactly the kind of pain points that they're facing. In this particular case, we're running with maybe them facing a situation where they're receiving low cold email outreach responses. Number three is the journey, so the sequence of events that they go through normally. So it could be that, hey, we are looking at low reply rates. I want to improve my cold outreach. I know that video works well, I want to try it, and now I am trying to find a solution between Loom and Vidyard or many others. And then finally, you understand the kind of language that they're using throughout this process, which is video prospecting, async demos, personalized outreach, and many other terms that they use. Now, if I was doing all of this research, if I had all of this information, I would have extreme levels of clarity when I'm finally inside a keyword research tool trying to gather some terms and actual volume data. So finally, if I was to use this and turn it into an actual topic, right? I'm just going to paint a picture with one particular topic, but essentially the same framework can be used for literally months of content strategy, months of research. So we have all of this information, right? We've looked at these 4 different components for a product like Loom, with the persona being SDRs, and many other assumptions that we've run with. Now, a topic that I can formulate in my head, and of course keyword research will be a part of it, is going to be something like how to increase cold email reply rates with personalized video outreach. Now, I know it's a massively long topic and highly specific, but it's also highly relevant specifically to the persona that you're trying to reach, at the right stage of their buying journey. Simply because we have been obsessively focused on customer research right from the beginning when we were trying to reach to this topic. So you can see, for example, we have a particular pain point that we're trying to solve, which is increasing cold email reply rates. Now we know exactly the kind of language that they were using, which is personalized video outreach, right? We also know that they would be finally looking at solutions beyond this, so we can turn this into other kind of assets, which can be, hey, can we create a comparison page on Loom versus Vidyard? Or could be other opportunities like Vidyard alternatives. So essentially, all of the research that we've done has finally led to a particular topic, which will 100% guarantee conversions. It's like at this point, even if you just get 100 clicks to this page on a monthly basis, you can guarantee literally 3 to 4% of conversions, simply because you decided to obsessively focus on the needs of your buyer before getting into a keyword research tool. So this is the exact same framework that I've used working with a ton of different companies. And I start with this normally, at least in some shape or form. You don't always get the ideal situation to work with a customer of a company that you're working with, as in you cannot request them to interview the customer all the time. In fact, I have been facing that problem for many months now. So instead, as an alternative, I request some video transcripts, right, of sales teams' calls directly with the customers. Or for example, I would say, hey, can I interview the sales team or maybe the customer success team? Can I look at some of the support tickets or other kind of things? Any other medium which gives you an inside view of how your customer's brain works. But essentially, if you're using this entire framework and applying it to actually build a content strategy which is rooted in customer needs, and you have topics like this finally created, and many of those for the next couple of months, there's absolutely no way that you don't drive pipeline from search as a medium. This is exactly why I believe customer research always comes before keyword research, because at this point, I have absolutely no ambiguity in my mind that this will work. So if you're someone who has been struggling in converting the content, who don't know if their content strategy research is actually resonating with the buyers, and whose manager is constantly doubting their abilities to do research and build a solid content strategy, use this framework.